What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bodacious Rant with Burning Rye. I hope everyone's had a good Super Bowl weekend. Hopefully everybody had a safe time, This weather was weird. It was freakishly cold and all that good stuff. But a sweet treat did happen besides, unless you're an Eagles fan or a Chiefs fan, depending how it goes or how it went down. We got The Last of Us quite early on Friday, episode 5. So we're getting close to the end a little bit, unfortunately, just because it's such a great season.
Halfway point now.
Unfortunately, it is the halfway point. And it was such a great moment. I feel like I say this every week that every episode is my favorite, but besides Bill and Frank's, this was the one that hit home for me, just because, like, for those who've been complaining, like, there's not a lot of action or all this and that, I'm pretty sure this episode satisfied it. If it didn't, then I don't know what you want, to be honest. But
yeah, play the game at that point,
Seriously, like, if you don't like it at this point, then this show is just not for you. So, like, don't even, at this point, forget it. But this is a spoiler review as well, guys, as always. So please do not forget to give us a like just to show your support. Ring the bell to stay up to date with notifications, and of course, subscribe. We always appreciate and always want to keep growing the community. So let's keep that going and keep the fun rolling, shall we? So this episode picked up right after last week, where they get held at gunpoint by Sam and Henry, right?
Yeah, Henry and Sam.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why I'm just all over the place with names. Maybe I don't drink enough water. Not get enough sleep. I don't know, but
that's why I have the good old IMDb cast list like at the ready. Because like you, I'm terrible. I'm terrible with names. But luckily, these are characters that I've known for a little while now. So the character names I get, the actor names, I got to look that up though.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just always like the random actors. Like I had trouble with Melanie Linsky last week, and apparently she got body shamed for her episode last week, which I was like, that's fucked up. Like it was by America's top model, like winner or something like that, and I was like, or something along the lines. I was like, wow, what a bitch. But anyways, we finally got Sam and Henry's backstory. And I will say this: I was a little nervous about how they're going to do the flashback about like seeing Henry and Sam throughout like their journey in Kansas City and stuff. But I think it paced itself pretty well. That it just shows, the day after, essentially, like a day after that, the Kathleen and the Resistance finally took over, and they're just on the run from her. And it sped itself up well. I'm glad it didn't drag on, you know what I mean? Because I didn't want to take too much screen time, because it's like we got to get forward on this,
Yeah, I mean, I thought they did a good amount, of showing us basically what the state of affairs were there in the Kansas City quarantine zone, like just seeing like what was happening after they presumably just won their uprising against the federal forces there. So to get their perspective of that, and them like hiding away and trying to get out of the city, and then getting to the point where we see the other side of the ambush scene of last week's episode. I thought that was all really cool, and I thought it really informed. We got to know these characters. We got to spend time with them, and I'm surprised that it didn't happen like in a cold open. These last few episodes didn't start with like like a scene in the beginning, like the first two, where we got like the flashbacks and stuff there. So just to jump right into it, like with the characters and tracking them through, these 10 days of them just hiding out and like trying to survive, and then ending with them meeting Joel and Ellie. I thought that was really cool. I think we got a good amount of screen time, and we got to meet these actors. Lamar Johnson, who plays Henry. I thought he was a great casting, and Kayvon Woodard, dude, the most adorable kid they could have gotten to play Sam, and the fact that they made him deaf, I thought was a pretty interesting choice. I don't know what you thought about that, but I thought it sort of in a way sort of strengthened the bond that he and Henry had.
Well, first off, I was thinking of, we gotta start at the end instead of the beginning, and then kind of cut, or is it just a linear story? I was just thinking about that just now. No, I like it, and you know me, dude. I really don't remember a lot of the first game, to be honest. I was asking him. I had to ask you a couple times. I'm like, wait, like Sam wasn't deaf, right? And it's like, no, and he was a little bit older in the game. But no, I think it worked perfectly well. Again, the writing behind this show has done a great job of making these tweaks to the characters where it's not such a major change that oh my god, it's totally, it ruins the story, it ruins it. If anything, it adds a little more depth to it because, like you said, I think it was a way better dynamic that Henry was definitely a decently older brother, and and then Sam was a little bit younger. I think it just worked out better, almost like a father and son dynamic. And I thought they were father and son in the first game, but I'm trying to replay that, so I'm not quite there yet. But
Yeah, I mean, at least it's a when we say a better choice, at least what we mean is like not just a better choice in general, but at least a better choice for the TV format, because when we meet these characters in the game, we get to play extended, sequences with them like at our side. In the game it was Pittsburgh and here it's Kansas City, but when we're doing the gameplay section with, Joel, Ellie, and Henry and Sam, that's sort of how we get endeared to their characters and how we as players experience them. But, this isn't a video game. This is a TV show, so they have to, do different narrative things to get the audiences to sort of, empathize with these characters at least. And I think they did a really good job of that. With these scenes that we get from them in the beginning.
absolutely, and I think even making Sam deaf is just another great avenue to give the hard of hearing community a little bit more perspective. Like we had, even though the Eternals was horrible, the fact that they made that one speed character like deaf and stuff. I think it adds more depth to characters, but also again it's expanding its reach to people and kind of giving people hope. Like, oh man, this kid's deaf and he's already in a fantastic show. Like that's awesome. They're still capable and they're just like everybody else. So I think that was cool too.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Representation is always great, and I like that it didn't fall into the trap means that other, I guess, like lesser forms of representation would have done, where it would have made it a hindrance. Like there wasn't at any point in this episode where because Sam is deaf, like he's at a disadvantage, or that's what gets him in trouble or anything. That's a little bit more problematic in terms of representation. Here we get to see that he's been able to survive with his brother just fine despite his disability, and I think that's a good sign of good representation.
Yeah, they were a dynamic duo really, but I like that it flash forward into that, and we got to see a more human side of Kathleen this episode too. Like not to say she's never human, but she's just a very cold person. But we get more depths why that Henry turned in her brother, and her brother meant the world to not only just her but the whole resistance community in general. Like gave the people of Kansas City hope because apparently, I like that they opened on that too. That Fedra in Kansas City was ran by like essentially mobsters and gangsters. Like it was not a good stable thing. Not that we saw a good one in Boston. Like it was still pretty like crooked, I would say, or very cutthroat into a certain extent. But we can understand why the people of Kansas City rose up, and even though it's still not a good situation for anybody, it was very eye opening. So I like those little details with that. Um, and then just Henry's plan going underneath the tunnels. I thought it was gonna be way more chaotic when they got to that point, just because we saw last episode that Kathleen and Pierce, I think the guys, or Perry, the guy that voices Tommy, that they saw that there's like a sinkhole and you see something like trying to rise up underneath, or like it could be sinking. She's like, no, we'll just quarantine this building off and don't go near it. We'll figure that out later. I thought there were gonna be a bunch under there, but then it was just like essentially a clear path and gave all four of them hope. I thought, oh, okay, this is fun. I don't mind it. And again, Bella Ramsey this episode exceeds at being Ellie, really, especially when her and Sam were geeking out over that the comic book. I forgot what it's called. Like
Savage Starlight. Yeah,
okay,
it's the collectible comics that she enjoys in the game, and it's like ones that you can pick up in gameplay like as a collectible. So the fact that they brought that in, I thought that was awesome, and again another great little nod to the games.
yeah. And then we find out that why Henry had to be a collaborator, because even though Joel made that comment like I don't work with snitches, it's like he did it because of his brother. How his brother had cancer, and they did have like something to help out, like not a cure, but basically essentially a little bit of something to help him get over it. But he had to turn in Kathleen's brother, so it was like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. But like you were telling me in our personal conversation, it was a good thing that they did that because it's showing a lot of it's kind of almost setting up stuff for even season 2 and later in this season. I'm not going to get into it too much past that, but just the fact that you're willing to do anything for that one person in your life that means something to you. And he even knew Joel off the bat. He's like, I know you're not her father, but you were somebody's father. So I know like I know what you're thinking too. And I was just like, damn, we're just trying to tug at Joel's heartstrings, but I wouldn't fuck with Joel on that. I'd be like, nope, leave him be.
No, I mean that's essentially just the thematic crux of The Last of Us as a franchise in general. That idea of like tribalism and what we would do to protect the people that we consider to be us. Like you mentioned, he had a very very tough decision to make, whether it was to save his brother or to give up this man that he himself said that he truly respected. The one that was the basically the mind and the heart behind this resistance that was growing in Kansas City. So, do you give that person up and save your brother, or do you not, and you potentially lose the person that you love? And that's again, the thing that this series touches upon. It's like the things that we do for love. Like how what the loving someone, like what decisions does that lead us to make? Sometimes it could be good ones, for the the good of other people, or it can be selfish, and it's like where do we draw the line on morality in that? It's like you go with, a lot of times we resort to the people that we know and the people that we love. And is that a bad thing? I don't know. It's not really for us or anyone to say. It's like it can go either way, and that's what makes this franchise so interesting, that moral gray area that they sort of operate in.
Yeah, I mean, I think you put it in the best way. It really just makes you think, what would you decide for the betterment of the world around you, or what makes you feel better, like what makes you feel whole. And yeah, and it's funny because that's been a topic for the last couple of weeks, especially since the Bill and Frank episode. That I mean, I don't want to get too political with it, but that dipshit Ben Shapiro was like, oh, this is a zombie show without zombies. And it's like, this isn't The Walking Dead, dude. It's called The Last of Us for a reason. That it's about the people who survived and their, you know, journeys kind of being human within this world. So I think that's what a lot of people fail to realize when they watch this show. And it's like, where's the clickers? Where's the tearing of body parts and all this stuff? It's like, it's much more than that. And if you can't see that, I really don't know what you want.
I wouldn't take a screenwriting advice from a failed Hollywood screenwriter, Ben Shapiro. I'll just say that.
True. You know, I mean, I'm definitely not a writer myself, but I'm like, I can still appreciate what this show has done. But then this last half was so great. Like I've been wanting to talk about this the whole time. Just, from them getting kind of pinned down by that old guy sniper, which I was like, oh, no wonder you're missing everything. I was kind of fucked up. I'm just saying. And then when the resistance came knocking on them, just invading that neighborhood, and it's like, Henry did kind of redeem himself by like saying, listen, you telling Ellie, like, hey, listen, get ready to run with him. Like, this has got to stop. But as soon as that truck started tipping over into the house when Joel shot the driver and it crashed in there, I was like, oh shit. They weren't in the tunnels. They moved to the neighborhoods and stuff. Like, oh man. And that horde of like clickers and stuff was so cool. So well done. And just the visual at the fire and stuff, all the resistance freaking out because it's like, yeah, I called it last episode. I'm like, they could take over the city, but they didn't really take it over because there's the infected are like somewhere there. What did you think of the bloater coming out compared to I know in the game it's like when we're still with Bill trying to figure out the battery and stuff, we run into the bloater at the gym. How did you? I mean, it's a show versus a game, but what did you think? Did you like this introducing of the bloater better or the video game better?
I mean, I don't know. They're so different, and so now it's hard to say which one I enjoy more. But the way it was introduced here was really cool because there's been a lot of like setup and anticipation, with just the ground, like in last week's episode, like looking like it was like breathing and fluctuating, like there's something big down there. So it was a definitely cool tee up for the reveal in this week's episode. And yeah, just the fact that we got the bloater and just like how they did justice to the clickers in episode 2. They definitely did the bloater justice in this week's episode. Just this big hulking monster that is just like a freight train when it runs at you. Like in the game, like it's a one shot instant kill if it gets a hold of you. So and we did get to see like what that looks like with
Yeah.
with Perry dying. So that was really cool to see. So this whole action sequence was really cool, and it was very tense. I really liked the way it was shot and the way everything all played out. Where we got to see like these infected act like the horde that we were, that they referenced in episode 2, where they're a hive mind essentially, and they're running in packs, and this thing happening out here in this little abandoned town will eventually, like, they'll get ears on it. Basically, they'll hear about it because they are underground and in this city. So the fact that we got to see it all happen, it was really cool the way it played out, and it was very tense, and just this show is, I don't think it's a negative, but I guess some people do, where this show is sort of light on the action. I think this episode definitely should have satisfied those needs, because this is really only the second biggest, I would say, set piece outside of the very first episode when things are going down. So yeah, the way it was done here was excellent, I think.
I mean, I stand by my comment where I think it's one of the best zombie like infected scenes I think of all television or film. Like I just got so hyped just seeing those clickers just rush everyone, and the makeup and everything was great because I could tell there was not. I don't feel like there was a lot of CGI involved. And that article you sent me about the bloater, because I was like, dude, yeah. I mean, if you were with me in person, Burn, you would know. I'd be like, oh my god, it's here! Holy shit! And just seeing it like pick up a guy, throw him down, and when we saw him well, kind of saw him. It was following Kathleen zooming out, but you see him tear Pierce's head off like in the game. Because if you played the game, everybody like, when the bloater gets you, you just kind of see the like halfway through of when your head gets torn off, and
Yeah. And
right at the
and
jawline too.
and I
Yeah.
think they also played like that sound cue too of like the sound when you die in the game. So I have to go back and
I
listen to it,
I
but I,
wouldn't
I
be
think it was
surprised.
there.
It was so good, dude. Like everybody got fucked. That's why I remember saying it out loud when I was watching. Like Kansas City is fucked, and they really were, because after basically Kathleen got mauled by the child clicker, which was her karma, saying kids die, they die all the time. Who cares? Because she wanted to kill Sam. That
Good call
child
on that. I
clicker.
didn't make that connection, but yeah, man, that is the karma kicking in.
I just thought it was the ironic moment. Like it's called a cruel irony, like my dependence on you. Just what? But that was great. And again, this is it's setting up a lot. Like we can't talk about Last of Us season 2 or even part 2 too much for those who haven't played or anything like that. But her storyline's a big theme with a lot of stuff. So I
Yeah,
just
but
I mean I like that's not too spoilery. Do you think, Bern?
no, no. I mean, but just to talk about it in the context of this season and her story, it's just it just goes to show, like, like, she wasn't supposed to be in this leadership position. It was sort of something that was thrust upon her, and I know I had my reservations about her last week, but I think with what we got to learn more about in this week was, yeah, that she was never meant to be like this leader of this resistance. It was her brother, and she sort of like filled in that role when Henry gave him up. So, the fact that she was sort of like pushed into this, and she has that sort of like mean streak, like with the way like she treats people and the way she talks about, like, killing people just so callously and dismissively. It's like, okay, so I see where you're coming from now. Like, you're someone that would normally in regular circumstances would be sort of unassuming, and you wouldn't think twice about him. But the way the world has gone, has twisted this person into being, this vengeful monster that we're seeing now, and that's just sort of clouds her judgment. Like there was a couple points here where she could have easily just turned back and thought about the best interests of the people that she is now in charge of, but instead she just hyper focuses on fighting and killing Henry, and this whole scene is a consequence of that, and that's a big theme that we get in here, and definitely one to keep an eye on in season 2 whenever that comes. But yeah, to get that sort of microcosm in this episode, it's a very tragic character, and one that I thought Melanie Linsky did a good job of, and yeah, I've come around to her in this episode for sure. I do kind of wish the show was a little bit less show and don't tell. It didn't really follow that real well. I wish we could have seen her and her brother, at least maybe a few interactions, or seen what it was like before our characters got into it. But the way they handled it here, I think, was about as good as you can do it, not having those scenes included.
Yeah, like you want to see a little. You want them to show a little more instead of just kind of like talk about it. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah, yeah.
okay.
Her conversation with Perry in that room where she's talking about her brother and stuff. Maybe just a few little like scenes or like sequences that could have been intercut there. It's always better to show these relationships than to talk about it. So, but I get when you're writing a TV episode, you're a little bit more pressed for time. Because you only have like about an hour or so to sort of get into it. But like I said, with what they were able to do here, I think they did an excellent job of.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if that was probably a plan when they were writing it, but it's like, well, Sam and Henry are truly
They're the
players in the game,
focus.
so yeah, let's focus more on them and make fans happy, but also make sense for the story and why we care about them.
And I guess sorry to interrupt,
No,
but just that being said, this sort of faction that we have here in Kansas City, in the game they're referred to just as hunters, and I will say, despite my little nitpicks about her not getting too much fleshed out, they are definitely a lot better characterized here in the show, because in the game they're just sort of like a faction that they get in your way and you fight them and you don't think too much of it. They're just sort of like these people that are patrolling this abandoned city, but here you get a little bit more meat to it. We get to see that they were a resistance for this hyper fascistic regime, and they just recently has upended them and are now the ruling people of that town. So they definitely have a lot more character this time around than they did in the game. So that's a big point that I just want to put on the show's a notch. That definitely, if there was a lack of characterization with her and her brother, overall it was a lot more well done than I think it was in the game.
well, it's safe to say, Burn, after this, there is no more characters in Kansas City. That's it. After what we just
Yeah,
saw.
I mean, my heart goes out to Kansas City. I'm so sorry, folks. But you reap what you sow. You do the bad things. Your football team does bad things to my football team. It just works out this way. This is just like Ryan said. This is karma just coming back.
Well, I wouldn't take it that far, but you know what, Burn? You be you, okay? I'm not gonna. No judgment here.
Where's your Mahomes now? That's all I'll say.
I'm not. I'm not related to him. I'm not even Kansas City fan, you moron. Oh
What
man,
good
but
is him throwing those crazy touchdowns gonna do you, huh?
you know
I'm
what? You're
sorry. I'll
right.
stop.
Nothing.
I'll stop. I'm sorry, Casey. If they
I'm
win the
sure.
Super Bowl, I'll eat my words.
I'm sure we're yeah, because we don't know yet, but I'm
No,
sure
as a
there's gonna
recording,
be
no, we don't know.
no as of the recording, but I'm sure we put targets on our backs by doing that. It's you know what? Come at me, bro. Not really.
Yeah,
Please
do
don't. But the rest of the episode played out very similar to the game, where I think that was one of the most heartbreaking things was just when
Yeah.
Sam and Ellie were just having their moment, just hanging out, talking about the comics. And Sam asked, like, are you still a person you think when you become one of those? And it's like, what do you mean? Like, you can tell Ellie was like, what are you talking about? And it was such a sad thing just because he's bit and she thinks, oh, me rubbing, like, cut him open my hand, rub my blood onto his cut, maybe that could help because she thinks it's medicine. It's like, Ellie, it's not that simple. It is way more complicated than that. But they were just she was just trying to do everything she can because this is like her first true friend at, like, throughout this whole show and maybe even her whole life. So the next morning was, I had a gut feeling that when she woke up the next morning, you see just Sam sitting there at the bed. It was like, oh shit, because he's deaf, he can't hear anything. He's just gonna have to be all visual. So when she goes to him and he's just all savaged out, it was like, fuck. Yeah, I was kind of hoping low key they could change it a little bit, but I was like, nah, they're not going to. They're gonna keep that heartbreak on there.
No, yeah, same. With just the amount of changes they made to Bill and Frank, in particular, there was a part of me that was holding on to hope that the Henry and Sam story would turn out a bit differently, but no, it was still the same emotional gut punch that we got into the game. Slightly different, here and there, but effectively it was the same outcome, and yeah, it hit just as hard. It's like, and the game is so shocking, and coming into it, as game players, you were expecting it to happen, but even then, it still hurts.
Yeah, and and then Henry was the one who pulled the trigger. I don't. Is that how it happened in the game? I don't remember.
Yeah, no, essentially that is how it goes. That is how it goes down. He attacks Ellie, and they kind of stumble into the living room, and Henry is able to get the gun before Joel does, and he's the one that ends up, killing his brother. And yeah, just the way it happened, it was basically the same thing.
Yeah, because like I that part again, I don't really remember what happened, but that was so sad, and especially the whole episode. Henry's like, I've never really been violent. I've never, like, you
Mm.
holding an empty gun at you was like the most violent I've ever been. But it's like him killing his brother who was infected. That was it. Like he had no, very much like Bill said to Frank, like I have no reason to live. You were my purpose. So
Hmm.
that's what happened when he lost his purpose. And such a somber episode. Like this is also just adding more like kind of damaging Ellie, like making her very ready for what happens later in the show. I'm pretty sure it'll be kind of very similar to the game. So far, they've been pretty on point with that, but
Yeah.
you can tell she's like, wow, like now we definitely have to find a cure, so I don't feel like this ever again. And it was just such a tough episode, but so bittersweet because it was so well done, and I can't wait to see what's gonna happen next week. To be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did enough of changes to Sam's character in particular, where his dynamic with Ellie was a lot different here in the show than it was in the game. Because, like I mentioned in the game, he wasn't deaf, and he was a little bit older, around the same age as Ellie, so there was a little bit of a more like a companionship, and a little bit more of a, you can tell, like in dialogue in the game, like he's kind of like crushing on Ellie by the end of their time together, and here for it to be a little bit less that and more of like a older sister, little brother relationship. The moments that we got in the sewers, that were them just having a little bit of moment to themselves to be kids again. It was so sweet. And then and yeah, her wanting to cure him in that moment at the end of the episode when he reveals to her that he's bitten, it just crushes your heart, because you're like, man, like you see her, she wants so much for it to work, like, okay, like, this is the thing that I can potentially be meant for. Maybe I can save this person that I met that I really like. And again, it's like a little brother to her, and in just this few moments, yeah, it was very sad. And just that little bit of acting that really was very effective was, when Henry shoots himself, that cry that Bella Ramsey makes in that moment, that moment of shock is just, oh man, that just really hit you in the gut. And yeah, that was just really tough. And so much how episode 3 was sort of a mission statement for Joel's character, and with Bill's note, we're old curmudgeons, and but we can find love, and we can find people to protect. This episode was basically a mission statement for Ellie. Like, I like her. She lost Tess, and now she's lost, Henry and Sam, and that we saw her at the end there, trying to heal Sam. It's like, okay, like you mentioned, like now she's sort of like, I need to do what I can to make this cure happen, because I can't go do this again. After he buries them, and she's already like, where's Wes? Like, come on, Joel, let's go. Like, she has her mission now. So they're both, they both basically have their mission statements going forward into the season, and it's going to be interesting to see, or at least interesting for people to see how that affects their two characters going forward.
It's almost like an evolution for both of them, or you can kind of almost consider devolving, where at first Ellie's super fun and all this. This is the first time she was more like this. And last episode, she's turning more into Joel, just kind of taking things as they come and just keep moving forward. Where Joel at least took the time to bury both of them. He didn't have to do that. I think old Joel would have been like, "Let's just go. We're not worrying about this." But
Hmm.
instead, she just lays down Sam's little pad and just like, "Let's go. Like I'm done wasting time here."
Yeah.
And Joel kind of had that face like, what do you mean? Like, this is your friend, right? Like, why aren't we taking time? So again, I think it's just, again, yeah, like you said, it's setting up their futures, essentially their paths going down this show. It's almost like an X. They start at certain points and then they're just going to cross and end up at different spaces, but for the better. It's great character development and great writing. So
Yeah, yeah. You always want them to start in one place and end in the opposite one, and like you said, that's just good writing in general.
yeah. But anything else you wanted to talk about real quick, Burn? Or I think we covered it, or did we cover everything? I think we did, but it's up to you.
Yeah, no, no, just this episode was fantastic. I think more so than a lot of the last episodes, I think this one just overall it and like envelops what everybody who loves the game, it has all those elements. We have the character moments, we have the crazy infected, we have these human factions that we have to run away from, and then we have the sad emotional gut punches. So I think in all those elements, I think were all prevalent here in this episode, and this was just sort of a great like microcosm of all the things that make The Last of Us as a series and as just a franchise great. So this one was really well done, and I can't wait to see the next few episodes.
Me neither, my dude. But everybody, what did you think of this episode? Is this your favorite one yet? That we finally got some action? Are you kind of falling off this show? What else would you have wanted to see with the clickers and stuff? Please let us know in the comments. We would love to know that. And again, we'll stay. Hopefully, you guys enjoy. You have a great Super Bowl weekend. Enjoy everything. And we got more Last of Us coming out. And Ant-Man finally comes out this upcoming week. So we're finally going to go see that. So stay tuned for that review. And as always, guys, stay bodacious and keep on ranting for the both of us.
Absolutely, everybody. Be good, be safe, and endure and survive.